Hey everybody, today we're going to talk about pronouns. Your goal in this entire presentation is to be able to identify pronouns and their antecedents in a sentence so that you can use a pronoun correctly in your own writing. Okay? And if some of these words don't make sense to you at this point, don't worry. It will as we progress. You want to make sure that you either have a split screen where you're watching this lecture and taking notes on your Chromebook, or you have printed out the guided notes and have them sitting in front of you. Regardless of how you're taking notes, you all need to have your composition book specifically for grammar and a pen or a pencil to be working with. Okay, let's begin. Let me start by saying that you're going to learn a lot of new words in this, and I don't want you to be stressed over it. Don't obsess over just trying to memorize the different categories of pronouns. It's more important to me that you're able to identify a pronoun when you see one more than you being able to tell me what type of pronoun it is. So even though I'm going to give you all of these different types of pronouns, I don't want you to overly obsess and focus on the wrong thing. I don't want you to study just the names of these pronouns. I want you to actually be able to recognize a pronoun. Okay? All right. Let's begin. What are pronouns? If you remember back from our lesson on the different parts of speech, a pronoun is a type of a noun, and it is a word that replaces a noun in a sentence. And the reason we have pronouns is so that we don't sound so repetitive all the time. Okay? So instead of saying Miss Shepherd, Miss Shepherd, Miss Shepherd over and over again, I can replace it, Miss Shepherd, the noun Mrs. Shepherd, with the pronoun she or her. Okay? All right. An antecedent. If you speak Spanish, and all of you are taking Spanish, so this is going to be helpful for that, the word for before in Spanish is antes, A-N-T-E-S. And if you can remember that root word, ante, meaning before, then the word antecedent should suggest to you that this has something to do with before. And that's exactly what it is. It is the noun or the thing that's being represented by the pronoun. And it should be in the sentence somewhere. Okay? So let's take a look at some examples. The dog wagged its tail. We have the word dog, which is a noun, and we have the word its. It is a pronoun. So instead of saying the dog wagged the dog's tail, we replace dog with its. This is called a pronoun. And the dog is called the antecedent because it is the noun that is being represented here. We took out the dog and we represented the dog with the pronoun its. Let's take a look at the second one here. Since I dropped my book bag in the wrong place, I had to pick it back up. Again, we have the pronoun it replacing my book bag. So I could say, since I dropped my book bag in the wrong place, I had to pick my book bag back up. But that sounds really repetitive. Why do it when I can replace it with a very simple pronoun it? So we have it is the pronoun and my book bag is the antecedent because it is the noun that the word it is representing. We have a bunch of different types of pronouns. If you look over here on the right to the purple area, you're going to see the different types of pronouns. Again, don't focus so much on memorizing the names as you do recognizing a pronoun when you see it. So subject pronouns are probably the ones that most of us are used to seeing, and that's the reason why they're called subject pronouns is because, well, they are usually the subject of a sentence, right? You can also call these personal pronouns. Some people just take out the subject altogether and call it personal. But you have I, you, he, she, it, we, and they. Okay? Again, these are the pronouns that are the subject, meaning that they do the action of a sentence. So I play, you play, he, she, it plays, we play, and they play. All right. Then you have personal object pronouns. Objects are the things in sentences that are receiving the action. They're not doing the action. They're receiving the action. So you can't say me plays. You can, however, say she plays with me. Okay, because you're receiving the action of being played with. All right, so you have me, you, him, her, it, us, and them. Then you have possessive pronouns, my or mine, your, yours, their, theirs, and notice the spelling of their, okay? Their. That is a possessive, meaning it belongs to somebody. It is theirs. It belongs to them. Our or ours. You have relative pronouns, who, whoever, whom, whoever, that, which, and whichever. You have demonstrative pronouns, these, those, this, that, such. You have indefinite pronouns, few, everyone, all, some, anything, nobody. And then you have intensive pronouns, myself, himself, itself, herself, ourselves, themselves, etc. So intensive is when you're trying to bring the focus in on the subject by essentially stating it again. Okay, so those are the different kinds. If you need to pause the video now, go ahead and do that. Make sure you're caught up on your guided notes. Okay, now that we've gone over what a pronoun is, what an antecedent is, and you've seen the different types of pronouns, I want you to practice recognizing pronouns in a sentence. So what you're going to do here is when I say so, you're going to pause this video, and in your composition book, you're going to write down the pronoun and the antecedent in each of these sentences. You're also welcome to write down the entire sentence, which I think is very helpful, and then highlight the pronoun and underline the antecedent. That's how I'm going to be doing it. So if it's helpful for you to do it the same way that I'm doing it, then please go ahead and write down the whole sentence, highlight the pronoun, and underline the antecedent. You can pause the video now and do numbers 1 through 8. Okay, so let's check and see how you guys did. We went to the old movie theater one last time before it closed. We have a couple pronouns here. We have the pronoun we, and we have the pronoun it. So I have highlighted we and it. Okay, now we does not have an antecedent. It's a subject pronoun and it doesn't need an antecedent. It's the subject of a sentence. However, it does have an antecedent. What is being replaced by it? The old movie theater. Okay, so instead of saying we went to the old movie theater one last time before the old movie theater closed, we replaced it with it. So our antecedent is the old movie theater. Number 2, we have quite a few pronouns. See if you got them all. He, me, our, I, myself, I, and it. Just because a pronoun is in there doesn't mean it has to have an antecedent. There's actually only one antecedent here. We have our family album, and the pronoun that's an antecedent for is it. For example, I could say, he gave me our family photo album, and I promised myself that I would never lose our family photo album. But instead of repeating that again, I replaced it with the pronoun it. Number 3, the king promised that Prince Charming would choose whomever he wanted to marry. We have 3 pronouns. We have the demonstrative pronoun that. Then we have whomever, and we have he. We only have one antecedent here, and that's for the pronoun he. Okay, Prince Charming is who he is replacing. Number 4, we have I, that, and my. I wanted that book, but my brother preferred the older edition. The antecedent here is really tricky because book is an antecedent. However, it actually comes after the pronoun that it's replacing. And that's because the person that wrote this was using a pronoun when they didn't really need to. They could have said, I wanted a book or the book, but they wanted to emphasize that book. I want that book. And they really emphasized it. So they wrote that in front of it, but they didn't really have to. It's called a demonstrative pronoun, and it's demonstrating which book. It's showing which book. That's what demonstrating means. So demonstrative, demonstrating. So the antecedent here is book, and that is what book is referring to. Number 5, this is the cake that everyone agreed on, but it's such an expensive brand of icing. All right, we have this, that, it, and such. The cake is the antecedent that is being replaced with the pronoun it. Now you'll notice they have an apostrophe S here. For those of you that aren't sure what that means, that is a contraction where it's just taking the word it and the word is and putting it together to create one word, it's. All right, number 6, the student promised himself that he would study every night before the test. Ooh, that'd be nice. Okay, so we have the pronoun himself and we have the pronoun he. Now, the antecedent here is actually referring to both of these. So the student promised the student that the student would study every night before the test. So that antecedent there, the student, is actually being represented by both himself and the pronoun he. All right, number 7, all the cars in the parking lot, which had parking permits, were towed. So we have the pronoun all, which some of you might have missed that, but all is what is considered an indefinite pronoun, okay? All, and we have which, okay? Again, the antecedent here is the cars, and it is being replaced by the pronoun which. So I could say all the cars in the parking lot, all the cars that had parking permits were towed. Okay, but I don't want so many words, so I just say which. Call that a relative pronoun, by the way. All right, and finally, number 8, we have whoever, it, and herself. Okay. Whoever dropped my laptop and cracked it is going to pay for replacement herself. Well, that's pretty presumptive that it was a girl that dropped it, but either way, we have the antecedent, my laptop, which is an antecedent for the pronoun it, because it is replacing my laptop. Again, finally, I could also say, whoever dropped my laptop and cracked my laptop is going to pay for the replacement herself. All right. But again, I don't want to sound repetitive, so I replaced it. My laptop antecedent, it is the pronoun. Okay, so let's talk about some problems. Now that we know all of these and we've practiced them, why are we even bothering? Well, the issue is that a lot of the times when you guys use pronouns, which you've been using in your speech since you began speaking, the issue is that sometimes you have problems in either differentiating between a subject and an object, or maybe even the agreement, meaning, if you have a singular pronoun, but you put it with a plural verb, it will be grammatically incorrect. And honestly, if there's something that I want you guys to come out of this school year with, it's better grammar, because when you speak better, when you can communicate better, it's going to make you appear more enticing to people. You're going to get what you want a lot more easily, and you're going to sound just as smart as I know that you really are. So let's take a look at this problem number 1 that I find a lot of students have, and that's knowing the subject versus the object of a sentence. Okay, the subject of a sentence is anything that is doing the action. The pronouns that we use for those subjects are I, you, he, she, it, we, and they. The object of a sentence is receiving the action. Okay, so if I say Miss Shepherd threw the eraser at the back wall, I don't know why I'd do that. That would be crazy. But let's say I did it. Miss Shepherd threw the eraser. What's the subject of that sentence? It's Mrs. Shepherd. It's me. I'm the one who's doing the action. What is the action? I'm throwing. That's an action, throwing. Well, what is receiving the action of being thrown? The eraser. So the eraser is the object. Now I can replace my subject, Miss Shepherd, and my object, the eraser, with pronouns. I can say, I threw it. Okay? So you guys need to know what a subject is, and you need to know what an object is. You always have to think carefully about who is doing what in a sentence. And it is so important that you're able to identify verbs, which is why we started out our grammar this year with going over parts of speech. And we're going to start 7th grade and 8th grade with that as well. Or if you're already in 7th grade, we're going to do it again in 8th grade. All right. So let's look at our examples, me versus I. My brother and I went to the park. Now, how come it's not my brother and me went to the park? Well, because Me is an object, and I'm not receiving the action of going to the park. I am doing the action. So it needs to be a subject. Another way you can do this is take out everyone else. Just leave yourself in there. Leave the I. Would you say me went to the park, or would you say I went to the park? The answer is I went to the park. So therefore, even if you add another subject to it, you still need to keep the subject pronoun I. They delivered the roses to me. You wouldn't say them delivered the roses to I. Why? Because they is a subject that's doing the delivering, and me is the object that's receiving the delivery. All right? We gave a present to them. We are doing the action of giving. They are receiving the action, so we say them. The object of they is them. My parents drove us to the mall. My parents are the subject. I could have written they. And we are receiving the action of being driven to the mall. So we have to use the object, which is receiving the action, the object pronoun here, us. All right, now, who versus whom? I'm going to go over this, and I understand if you don't understand it the first time. Listen to this video a few times if you have to. Ask me questions if you need to. I will give the trophy to whomever wins. Okay, so again, this is the object. You're receiving the trophy, so it's a whom. If you're receiving it, it's a whom. Okay, whoever wins, well, there's this subject there, right? It's whoever's doing the winning. Whoever's doing the winning, that's the subject doing the action. Who gave me this book? Again, who gives, who gave, who action, subject action. To whom should I write a thank you note? Who is receiving the thank you note? All right, or who is receiving the written thank you note? It's a object, so it needs to be whom. A trick that I do, I learned a long time ago, and I tell my students, and it might help you, is if you can replace the whomever or the whom with him, they both end in that that M sound, then it would be considered an object. So I will give the trophy to him. That would work, right? It still makes sense. It still makes grammatical sense. So if you don't know exactly who it is, you say whomever. Let's check it out with our third example. Can I say him gave me this book? No. So it would be who instead of whom. All right. Should I write a thank you note to him? That would make sense. So it would be to whom. All right. So if you can replace the who or whom with him and it still makes sense, then it should be whom. They both end in that M sound. All right. This is a good point to take a break, pause the video, stretch, make sure your notes are all filled in correctly. Okay, here's problem number 2 that we see a lot, and that's pronoun agreement. Many English speakers struggle with singular versus plural errors, and that's even if you've been speaking English your whole life. I know I still do it if I'm not actively thinking about it. The biggest problem with this is that because so many English speakers make this problem, we've become used to hearing words and sentences said the incorrect way, okay? Here's the thing. If you use a singular pronoun, you can't randomly switch to a plural one later on in the sentence. It just wouldn't make sense. And vice versa. If you're using a plural pronoun, you can't all of a sudden later on in the sentence switch to a singular one. It won't make sense. So let's look at some problems with the fixes here in the right. The student revised their essay. I've heard this so many times. I've used this so many times. But the student is one person. There means that there's more than one. So it has to be fixed. How do we fix it? The student revised her essay, or the student revised his essay. If you're not sure if it's a him or a her, you can say the student revised his or her essay. Okay? Someone forgot their coat. Again, someone is one person. There means that there's more than one. Someone forgot his or her coat. Third one, the company. That's a singular thing. It's one entity, the company, will throw their party tonight. No. The company will throw its party. Company is a singular, its is a singular. Each student knows their grade. Again, each student means one. Each student, one student, knows his or her grade. Everyone. Now, this one's tricky because a lot of people think everyone means a lot of people, but everyone is singular. Okay, so memorize that now. Write it down right now 6 times if you have to. Everyone is singular. Okay, it ends in the word one. There's your hint right there. It is singular, so therefore it has to have a singular pronoun. Everyone memorized his or her part. Okay, everyone is singular. That's one that I hear all the time people get mixed up with. All right, problem number 3, vague pronouns. Vague means unclear. Be careful using one pronoun when there was more than one possible antecedent. That can get really tricky. Or using a pronoun with no antecedent at all. That also can get really tricky. Make sure you either have an antecedent in the sentence or in one of the nearby sentences as a context clue. We've talked about context clues before. They're very important. Let's look at our purple area example here. The king promised that Prince Charming could choose whomever he wanted to marry. Well, that's pretty clear that he is talking about Prince Charming, right? Or is it talking about the king? Now you're wondering, well, what's the antecedent here? Well, the problem here is that's vague. We're not sure. Are they talking about the prince can marry whoever the king chooses or the prince can marry whoever the prince chooses? You need to make that more clear. So I would probably have you rewrite that and rephrase it in a different way. So look at that second example. This proves that Harry Potter is the best character of all time. What proves? You need to make sure that either in this sentence or in the sentences before it, you were having some sort of a claim as to why Harry Potter is the best character of all time. Third example, I was supposed to bring him with me. Who were you supposed to bring with you? Your little brother? Who? The king? The president? Who? You need to have an antecedent. There's no antecedent here. She promised that I would win. Again, who are we talking about? If you have ambiguity, if it's vague, if it's not clear, you're going to have to rewrite this. Be careful with that. I see this problem all the time in my students' writing. You guys write out these pronouns because in your mind, you know exactly what you're talking about, but you need to remember that not everybody will. Not everyone's in your mind. Okay, that's just for you. All right. Again, I want you guys to have your composition books open, and I'd like for you to pause this video when I say and write down numbers 1 through 7. And I want you to tell me what's wrong here and fix it if you can. That would be great if you can fix it. All right, so go ahead and pause the video now and write this down in your composition book, and then we'll go over the answers in a moment. All right, let's take a look at the first one. Everyone has their own locker. I told you that everyone is singular, so the pronoun there is incorrect because that's plural. You need to change it to his or her. Number 2 is actually perfect the way it was. We should do our part to help the environment. That's great. Me and my friends want to go to the game. It would be my friends and I. Number 1, if you took out my friends altogether, you wouldn't say me want to go to the game. You would say I want to go to the game. Now we put our friends back in, and we always put the other subject before ourselves. So we never say I first, okay? We're a selfless language, so to speak, okay? We are not selfish. We're not putting ourselves first. We're putting others first. So it's always my friends, or whatever the subject be, my family, my mom, my dad, my little sister, my brother, my best friend, okay? And I. Number 4 was perfect the way it was. Mom bought ice cream for me and my friends. Great. You wouldn't say mom bought ice cream for I. Okay, so if again you take off my friends, you would not say mom bought ice cream for I. You would say for me because it is an object. You are receiving the ice cream. Number 5, whom should I invite to prom? Well, let's rewrite that as a sentence instead of a question, a declarative sentence, right? Let's write it as I should invite him to prom. Would that work? You bet it would. So because I can put him in that sentence and it still makes sense, then I would use whom, not who. Number 6, give it to him. Well, this is one of those vague pronouns that I'm talking about. Give what and who is him. Okay, I need more information. This is again one of those times where in your mind, you know exactly what it is that he's given and who he is, but we don't. So be more specific, give more information. Number 7, the boy and his friend knew that he was in trouble. Which friend? Or which he, sorry, the friend or the boy? This is just like the king and Prince Charming example, right? So you need to be more specific here. You have to rewrite that. Maybe the boy and his friend knew that the boy was in trouble. Maybe we don't use a pronoun in this case because that could be a little bit vague and confusing. All right, that is it for now, you guys. So go ahead and go over your answers, go over your notes, make sure you have everything. And if you have any questions remaining, please let me know as soon as possible.